AOI is turning 160 in December. And as most of you know, we have been looking back at our own history and talking about some of our founding members. And so far, we have talked about this group of guys. So we've talked about Taylor, Bradley, Forrest, Kalen, and Brent. And this is most of the original officers of AOI at their foundings. Bill has kindly put these talks that we've had also on YouTube, so if you have missed any of them, you can catch them on our website as well as on YouTube. We are trying to make it so easy for you to find us everywhere. Social media, YouTube, you can find us online. Today, we're going to be talking about Dr. Alexander McDonald Davis, and he was the first recording secretary of AOI. Had it been up to Dr. Davis, AOI would not be called AOI. It would have been called the Columbus Association, which was his recommendation at the very first meeting. He wasn't quite as fond of the name Oldest Inhabitants. But Benjamin Taylor, who was president, kind of shouted him down and said, "Hey, I'm proud to be one of the oldest inhabitants." And so Davis backed down. He said to show that old men were not querulous, he would withdraw the suggestion. And I'd like to note that he was 56 at that time when he was calling himself and the rest of them old men for that. He was born in Baltimore, actually, in 1808. He didn't come to D.C. until 1830. And he went back and forth between Washington and Baltimore until he settled in D.C. for good after he married Martha Kelso from Baltimore. They lived where the arrow is on the bottom of the slide, on this row of townhouses on E Street, E and 7th, in downtown, in Penn Quarter. Some of these buildings actually still exist. I believe the building next to his does not, but I believe the building next to him is a Sweet Green, and the building next to that is a Luke's Lobster Roll. So you can actually still go and look at this section and what was left of it. It's right around the corner from the Clara Barton missing persons office on 7th. He was related, his brother is Reverend Charles Davis, who was a noted Methodist priest and sometime government clerk. He was a Navy chaplain at the outbreak of the Civil War. And he was expelled from the Southern Conference of the church for remaining in the Union. But when he died in 1867, he had become the chaplain at the Norfolk Naval Hospital, so he did manage to get back down south. Dr. Davis died unexpectedly at the age of 63, we believe from a stroke. He had sent one of his servants to go to the market to get him some strawberries, and by the time she came back, he was dead in his bed. So this was quite unexpected for him. His wife, Martha, had been visiting his son, Jack, who at that point was an Army instructor in New York, but he did become a brigadier general before he retired. He spent his career in the Navy. And Jack, by the way, graduate of Gonzaga High School. So you're looking for graduates? That's Jack. He's got your back there. We don't have I haven't been able to find a picture of Dr. Davis, but we have an idea of what maybe he looks like by seeing a picture of his son and a picture of his brother. So you can kind of envision what he might have looked like. You can see from his obituary on the left that they did close the government in consequence for his memorial service. So he was important to D.C. as well. And he was important in kind of two ways. He had two parts to his career. The first one was healthcare, as well, and public health, as well as becoming involved with local politics. So during the cholera epidemic in 1932, he came to Washington and he worked to treat patients who were suffering from cholera. He worked with Dr. Joseph Burroughs at that time. There was a report that was published in the paper that is in the middle there of his going to treat a man who was suffering from the symptoms of cholera, who then did die, and he listed them because every person who was dying, they wanted to know what the symptoms were and how long it took them to die, and this was part of the public health service. you could die within a matter of hours after you started to show symptoms. Mostly from dehydration, you go into septic shock, and you died. They didn't know exactly what cholera came from, how cholera was spread until the 1850s. So if you see on the upper left, there are notices of how to avoid cholera that were passed around DC, and a resolution by the DC government to stay away from certain fruits and vegetables. And they listed all of them there: peas, potatoes, cabbages, and they weren't sure. They thought it came from the air. It did actually come from the water. So even though their theory was wrong, the practice was actually not bad. It did help to prevent the spread of that. Dr. Davis became a well-known figure because of that, and because of his involvement in things such as the Orphans Asylum and Girls' School, that he ended up running for local office. So he served as an alderman, he served as a council member, he served as president of the council, and he did run for mayor. And while he was president of the council, he pushed through a resolution to be able to build a bridge at K Street, at the end of K Street, going over Rock Creek, so that it could connect Georgetown to the downtown area. So this is a photo of, this was in the 1850s that they passed that. So they did build a bridge. This is another bridge that replaced it in 1907 that you can see here on the right, and the arrow points to the bridge. But you can still see in 1907 how rural it was still, I think, to this connection from during. So you can imagine 50 years before that, what that crossing might have looked like for him. So the other part of his career was in national politics. And it's always a little scary picture when you put up Henry Clay there. Sorry about that. That's after lunch, right? It's a little shocking as it comes there. So he joined the Whig Party, which was prominent in DC, not just in politics at that time. It was part of the main parties of the two-party system with the Democratic Party, but with AOI members. So as you look at the list of people who belong to the Whigs of Washington, you see Joseph Bradley, you see Dr. Magruder, and you see them time and time again in all of these major political organizations, including the Clay clubs, which were supporting Henry Clay for president when he was running for president. So he not only served on these committees, but he became an officer in these committees as well. So he was absolutely well thought of. If you're not, I won't go into a whole long talk about what the Whigs were, but I think it's important to note that at its very basic level, they were opponents of Andrew Jackson, and they were opponents of what they called the executive tyranny of people like Andrew Jackson as president in the White House. So they were, that was one of the issues for the Whig Party. Henry Clay didn't get the nomination. The nomination went to William Henry Harrison. That's on the bottom right here. So Dr. Davis put his support behind him, joined the inaugural committee to both plan the inauguration party as well as the parade. And this is the first time citizens formed a committee to form an inauguration for a presidential inauguration. It didn't go so well, I'm sure you know, for William Henry Harrison. After the inauguration was all downhill. He died 35 days later in the White House, shortest presidential term that was on there. It was not because of Dr. Davis and his planning of the inauguration. And it was not, as many people have talked about over the years, because it was cold that day and he talked for 2 hours in his the longest inaugural address ever. And he was one of the oldest presidents we've ever had. He wanted to look young, so he didn't wear a coat, didn't wear a hat, didn't wear gloves. And it was for a long time thought he caught a cold, got pneumonia, and died from that. More current researchers think he actually died from typhoid because he didn't show symptoms until 3 weeks later, and that was from the contaminated water that was known to be in the White House at that time and in the systems. So, so public health and politics always interconnected in DC. Dr. Davis is buried at Oak Hill Cemetery, like so many of them, with his wife, who died 7 years later, and his daughter, who had died at age 6. So for more stories of our founders, We will be having them as the year goes on, as we celebrate the 160th. But we are also on our AOI 160th campaign to preserve more of our photos, to preserve our records, to digitize them so that our history will not be lost, so DC history will not be lost, no matter what happens with any of the repositories that are around DC. So we are asking you, we thank those of you who have donated, and we ask those of you who might be interested to donate in a category of 160. So $160, triple that, make it $16, $1.60. Anything you would like to give, we are happy to have. As we go forward for our 160th year, preservation will be our key focus for the next year, probably for the next several years to come, but especially with our 160th there. We do have these forms available, and you can also find that online for us. Okay, a couple